What's up, everybody? This is Phoenix back with yet another diatribe because I'm on those all the time. So I wanted to actually do this one specifically with a really, really good friend, someone I've known for probably way too long, um, and someone who I respect tremendously. He does not mince words, he tells it like it is, just like me. And it's someone I've always looked up to and respect just because he's older. But but he's also someone who I just we get each other, if that makes any sense, and we both are kind of in the same realm. We try to help people live their best lives and hold themselves accountable and really cut through the bullshit and get to what's real. And that's really what Diatribe is about. That's what I'm about. And that's what Kelly Curtis is about. So, Kelly, here he is yet again. I'm sure you've seen him once before. So,
Yeah, we back again. To back there and talk some more shit.
exactly. Exactly right.
Your audience is probably like, this dude again? Shit.
Oh Lord, he was. Oh, I'm still trying to recover from the realness last time.
Right.
Um,
You triggered me last time. I
ex-
still haven't got over
yeah,
it.
I know, right?
For you
Exactly.
today.
Exactly, right? So, specifically on this diatribe, this one's a lot different than my others. My other ones have been, with executive assistants and talking about the executive assistant game. But just in case your screen is fuzzy or something, it's two Black men um, during a time when, we've got a lot of problems that have now come to the surface. And to be honest with you, I'm still not okay, to be honest. I'm still, if anything, I think I've come to the conclusion, and Kelly, you and I can kind of dive into this, but I've come to the conclusion I just don't want to live here anymore.
Hmm.
I'm done with the US because the way I look at it, I've given this quote unquote amazing country 50 years of my life with the expectation from my ancestors to hopefully get this right and to do right by this race, and it still hasn't happened. We're still seeing systemic racism. We're still seeing police brutality in increasing numbers now, and now even more conspicuously. And the reason why we're seeing it is because it's being videotaped. And I think again, it's something that's been going on for so long. And Kelly, you can attest to this. Even growing up, like we had to watch our asses all the time. We had to mind our p's and q's for fear of being in situations where the police were called, or we could be mistakenly seen on the wrong side of the law, etc.
Yeah.
um, and you've got two young boys, two young Black amazing gentlemen who are crushing the game as sports athletes. But again, I'm sure you have very real concerns about their safety too as they continue to grow, and when they sort of go out into society as young men and young adults. Then what? It's kind of out of your hands. So
Yeah. I mean, as a father, um, especially raising two Black men, um, it comes with special challenges.
mhm,
And that's not unique to me. Every Black family, especially if you have boys, uh, has that stress of making sure that they're prepared for the world that they're going to enter. And so, I've heard two kind of ways of approaching this, in that there are some that says, well, you know, I'm going to raise my Black children to not see color. We're not going to discuss color or this or that. I don't want them to be disadvantaged in any way. And I see the logic with that, but I also see the flaw in that too. Because here's the thing, I think the greatest gift that you can give your children is the gift of confidence. A confident kid can do any fucking thing. And so I agree in that. I don't want them to have this cloud over their head when they walk out of the door of thinking that they're less than or disadvantaged, or somehow, you know, the world is against them. But I do need to prepare them for the reality of, hey, there are certain dangers or situations that you need to be aware of specifically because you're Black,
Right.
and that your white friends don't have to worry about.
Right.
And if you walk out there without, if you allow your children to walk out and not prepare them, I think you're putting them at a disadvantage, as well as putting them in danger, in my opinion. You know, there are certain things that if they try to mimic their friends, they're going to end up in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they need to know this. They need to realize this. It's not. I don't think that's anything wrong with just, hey, here's the world as we live in it. That
Right.
doesn't mean that you can't be everything that you can be, but just know that, hey, there's a landmine over here. There's a ditch over here. There's a snake around that corner. You know, if I sent you out there and didn't tell you these things and the snake bit you, then you're like, Dad, what the fuck? You
Right.
didn't tell me. The goddamn snake was around the corner and you knew.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I guess that's the thing where I feel fortunate that I didn't have children, because I really wouldn't know what to tell them. I was thinking the other day, and me as obviously, we know each other. That's how we met as musicians, and me being a songwriter. And I remember I wrote this song that may or may not see the light of day in the shower, and it's entitled "What Do I Tell My Son?" And the whole premise of it is, you know, I when I had this child, I had these big, grandiose plans and dreams for him, and I still do. But I have to temper that with the fact that I have to tell him what to prepare for, how the correct. I even wrote it into the song. The correct choreography for when you are pulled over, because it will happen.
Yep.
To make sure that you explain every move that you make, as to not leave anything to chance, to figure out how to maybe hit that button on your phone before the cop comes to your window to ask for your license and all. You know what I mean? Just as a precaution. But that therein lies the problem for me. I've had to deal with that. You've had to deal with that for
Mhm.
50 plus years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I'm having a hard time reconciling right now is all that everyone is seeing right now has been going on to some degree for 400 plus years.
Long
So
time.
for me, I'm having a problem with, where the fuck have y'all been all this time with all of this? Did it take you watching some man with his knee on someone's neck, literally losing his life in front of you, with his MF hands in his pocket, no less, which
Right.
is the ultimate disrespect as far as I'm concerned?
Yeah.
Is that what it took? Like,
It,
did we not learn anything? Like, this is crazy to me. So
it is crazy.
I just don't
And
get it. Like, it's
I
so
feel the
crazy.
same way in that, because you have to ask the question, how did you not see it? Because I talk to a lot of people these days. I've appeared on a lot of shows and podcasts, and
Lord knows I have.
lately, because the good news is the conversations are
Right.
taking place.
Agree.
So that's good. So I'm open to have dialogue with anyone who wants to discuss it reasonably.
Right.
Um, but it does beg the questions like, how didn't you see this before? Why did it take something so, you know,
Heinous. Like,
heinous and just horrific
right.
for you to say, oh, now I see.
There
Now I
is
get
something
it.
to that. Yeah, exactly.
And it's just, in a way, it just makes you angry.
Yeah.
And like, why did it take this?
Right.
Why did we have to go to this extreme
Right.
before you recognize, for me, it's like recognizing that, there's another human being that we're talking about,
Exactly.
or as a collective, as a group, Black people
Right.
are human beings
Right.
that,
Right.
feel pain just like anyone else, are concerned about their kids just like anyone else. You know,
Agreed.
there's this idea that, you know, we don't feel in the same way or to the same depths as other folks. And that's
Right.
not just me talking. That's been studies have shown that even doctors,
Yeah.
uh, you know, when studied, show that with black patients, they're not as quick to administer pain medication.
Right.
And you know, it's alarming, even just in the medical industry that or medical field, that you know black women, you know, delivering children
Mhm.
are have the mortality rate is through the roof.
Which a lot of people aren't grasping. Like, women are dying during childbirth. Like, what part of that don't you get? Because I think, again, we can have a whole media
Yeah, that's a
conversation.
whole different
That's
conversation.
a whole other conversation. And trust me, I would love to go in on all media, to be honest with you, even the
Yeah,
quote unquote safe media, because it's not. But I think, again, it's, what this is unearthing for me is, very conspicuous examples of disparity. um you know what's even cracks me up now is this whole Karenism that's going on, and
that's hilarious.
these situations where it's just like, and you say there's no privilege. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, what alternate universe am I living in right now where this is
Get
in any
mad.
way okay?
They'll get
But
pissed off if you say they got privilege. They don't like that shit.
oh, I know. And I guess that's the thing. Here's the thing too. I think a lot of people, white people specifically, are now getting to a point where they're like, okay, okay, we got it. Let's move on. Let's move on. Like, okay, you guys had your moment. Let's move on. And I'm just like, not so fast.
Yeah,
Because isn't it funny how the discomfort that is out there now, both in a sort of a very social setting, but then also even in a business setting,
yeah,
it's uncomfortable.
it is.
And this is the first time in my lifetime that it has been this crunchy in every direction you look. Thank you, COVID. you
Mhm.
know and here's the thing. I wrote like an article. I think it was an article, and I said, don't tap out, because I think that's kind of what's already starting to happen.
Yeah,
LinkedIn is kind of going back to business as usual, because I think people just kind of sick of talking about all things black. To be honest with you, I call it
they
black
are.
fatigue. And I'm just curious. I mean, are you sensing that as well, where it's just like, people are just wanting to kind of shun this, or like at least compartmentalize it and put it away for a second, because it's
Absolutely.
been too much of y'all. Now we need to
It's,
get back to us.
well, we have to look at it from the perspective of someone who hasn't traveled the same roads as us as black people.
Right.
And the reality is, there's been a lot of talk. There's a lot of dialogue, and the reality is there is a fatigue that sets in, and it's only been a few weeks. This is some shit that we've dealt with for years. But here's the thing: we have more stamina when it comes to dealing with this shit, whereas a lot of white people do not.
Right.
How would you build the stamina? That's like, the first time you go out training for a marathon
Mhm.
and you've never run before, that first 3 miles is holy shit.
Right. Right. Like,
I gotta
ooh,
quit.
I'm sorry. Did you say 26 point?
Right. We've been running back to back marathons for a long time.
That's
You
well put.
motherfuckers done got a few miles in and want to tap out.
Right.
And so, and that's part of the issue, is that there's just not the emotional stamina
Right. Right.
to deal with something. And you also, it's a very heavy realization for some people. I've been on several shows, and I talk about seeing the red ball, and
Right.
the
I love
concept of
that.
the red ball.
Yeah, exactly. I love
And
that concept, by the way.
what that is that if we're both in the room and there's this huge red ball in the middle of the room, and I'm talking about how this ball is causing problems for me and my family, and I mean, and for whatever reason this ball is an issue, and I'm speaking to you about it, and you respond with, well, I don't see a ball. What ball? What are you talking about? It kind of leaves it to where the conversation stops, because we can't further the dialogue if we can't both see the red ball. We have to see the same thing.
Right.
And so similar in this situation is that, we see the racism, we
Right.
see systemic racism, we see the bias, we see all these things because we live it.
Right.
And many times when we say, hey, this is a problem, we get the response was, what problem?
Right.
I don't see racism. I don't see color. All lives matter.
Right.
What do you mean? And it just, it makes me personally angry
Right.
when I'm trying to have a conversation about something that's really bothering me and people that look like me. And you say, well, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
How do you not see what the fuck I'm talking about?
Right. Exactly. Exactly right. And here's the thing that, again, for me, it's just layers and layers of, I'd say, I'll be honest with you now, maybe it's turned into just disappointment, because I think about it. I've lived, all over the world, and every single corner of the world that I travel, Black culture has permeated their culture. It is, to an extent, celebrated, in fact.
Yeah.
Obviously the nice parts, the music, the athleticism, the style, all of that, Japanese people running around with big ass afros, bigger than any afro I've ever had in my entire life, asking me first question out of their mouth, do you rap? When I was living there, I'm like, clearly I do not.
That's big out there. The hip hop
Right.
culture is huge.
It's humongous. And, I don't know, I might make some enemies, but I would like put a South Korean hip hop dancer and a Black hip hop dancer in the same room and have them go head to head. Don't drop your money on us, because
they
these
studied our
kids,
art. They have studied and
owned it.
practiced.
And that was one of the things I sang for one of their top pop stars when I was there, and right before the 2000 turn. And we were the only all Black backup dancers that country had ever had. And their singer was like the number one singer. They called him, the Korean Michael Jackson. That was kind of was. It was hilarious.
I think I heard of that guy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's like a legend over there. And but I just remember we were like the Beatles. Like they were just like, oh my God, the Black back dances, and everywhere we went, we got mobbed. But again, it was one of those things where that's the one time where I've been Black, where I've just been like, wow, I'm actually being celebrated. Like, what the hell? This feels weird. And then of course I came home and I'm back to being American Black, which is a whole different situation, as you can imagine.
Well, you were also viewed as a celebrity.
Yeah.
Because even here, if you're a celebrity, or if you can sing and dance or dribble a ball, you get treated a little differently.
Right. A little differently, but
slightly.
But isn't it funny how this is all sort of set up in a way where, and I had this discussion with my friend Dante, who's a genius, but it's still set up in a way where you can only achieve to a certain degree, because the construct is still, it's still based on white supremacy, meaning a supreme race. And I think it's another thing that drives people crazy is the whole term white supremacy. I like to use it just because that's the construct of it, but I think people are triggered by it because all they think is KKK when people say that. But my thing is,
what it is. That's the most accurate description.
It is 100%.
It has other connotations these days, but it's a more accurate description.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people, as they're sort of hopefully the more woke ones, quote unquote, are starting to look at history and figuring out when white became a thing, when it was literally legalized, in doctrine of, Black, meaning slave, Negro, enslaved, versus white, unslaved, non-indentured servitude, blah, 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 blah. And really separating the two races, legally, and also creating that disparity between, these rights versus these rights. And I think, again, this all comes down to even the premise of even KKK white supremacy still comes down to basing their ideology on all of those laws that were created all those years ago to separate us,
Yeah.
and to basically oppress Black people. So, I think our textbooks in school sort of gave us this, Holly Hobby version of, oh, the Emancipation Proclamation, and oh, Abraham Lincoln was the greatest thing that happened to Black people, and oh, once we got past segregation, everything is rosy, and I'm like, y'all don't even understand. Segregation still exists if you really look hard
Right.
enough. And then also this sort of low-key oppression, this low-key, not even low-key anymore, but this attitude toward Black people. It's
Mhm.
evident. Look in tech. Tech is still trying to find any excuse that they can, to basically rationalize not hiring Black people, not looking for Black people. If I hear one more company talk about, oh, there's not enough of y'all in the pipeline, you know, miss me with that bullshit. You ain't even looking. I know this. I've
Right.
worked for some of the top tech companies in the nation, and I know for a fact, I know exactly who you're reaching out to find Black talent, and it's an embarrassment, is what it is.
Well, they're not. You know, part of it is just is the conditioning that we all have experienced. Over years, and the imagery that we've been exposed to, and that conditioning and imagery creates a certain expectations of what uh, a tech hire should look like
Mhm.
or should be.
Or even
And
finance. I mean, that's your realm. I
in
was in it as
finance,
well for a while.
exactly. There's okay. This is kind of the avatar that they're looking for.
Right,
I
right.
I don't like that term, but
Yeah, but I like it. It works for me. I thought Avatar was a great movie about race that people didn't
right.
quite grasp. It was fantastic.
And so we're conditioned with these ideas, and we're victim of it too,
Hmm.
because the the media is a powerful thing.
Hmm.
Media determines the images that you see,
Right.
and from what you see, what your beliefs are based on what you gets input,
Hmm.
and so we develop these beliefs about the world. Even us, I didn't realize as a child that a lot of African cities were fully developed just like here,
Hmm.
because we never saw those images.
Exactly.
The images we saw were people in the jungles, and with
Loincloths and
loincloths, and
necklaces up to here.
yeah, walking
Right.
around with handmade weapons and shit. That's not most of the modern cities in Africa,
Hmm.
but we don't see it. And so you develop these things. And so even when it comes to African Americans, Black people here, what you see is what you believe. And if all the images, not just on the news, but look at it on the TV shows,
Yep.
where we either non-existent,
Right.
or the roles that we are, especially the ones that we grew up. Also, I never saw any Black folks. I never saw a Black person on the Brady Bunch. We watch
Right.
that shit every day.
Oh my God, you're right.
Not a single Black soul
I don't think they had a Black friend.
on Brady Bunch or Partridge
And
Family.
I watched all of those like it was going out of style.
I did too. I used to
Wow.
love those shows.
Wow, you just broke my
But
heart right there.
what does it do as far as your conditioning, even as a Black person?
Hmm.
You never saw us.
Right.
You saw Gilligan's Island. We can't be on the fucking island. Every
Apparently
once
not.
in a while, remember they used to have the natives on there,
Right.
Gilligan's, and
Right.
they were looking like fucking savages and shit.
Exactly.
The non-white folks were uncivilized,
Hmm.
even though their dumbasses got stuck on the island and couldn't get off.
Exactly. Maybe if they kind of asked some of the natives how to actually build a good boat,
And
they might have been able to get
the whole show was based on some dumbass.
out.
Gilligan was the dumbest
It was
motherfucker on the planet.
about as dumb as they come. That's hilarious.
But even he was better than the brown people on the
Yeah.
show.
Which is
So
All the context you need.
we grow up with this imagery, even
Hmm.
us. So you fast forward into adulthood
Hmm.
and you see all these other images
Hmm.
that mostly have been negative.
Yeah.
So what are they supposed to see? Now you layer that against the backdrop of most of these folks have not had a black person in their home. I'm talking. You don't want to say, "Oh yeah, I have friends. I know black people." Really,
Uh,
how many been to your house
right. And how many times did you go to dinner or lunch with them today, or yesterday, or this week, or this last, or this month?
for this year?
Right.
So it's not surprising how where they get their draw their conclusions, and therefore when they're trying to fill positions where their mind goes to, or okay, I'm not looking here because clearly these aren't who we're looking for.
Right. Right.
Even on the subconscious level, I don't
Right.
even think it's conscious. I think it's very subconscious. And so, okay, I'm not even. And here's where you look.
Right. Because it's a comfort. I mean, and I in a weird way, I don't fault people for that necessarily, in that, people tend to congregate with people they feel comfortable with. And that comfort usually comes from, the people that they commiserate with on a daily basis. They went to school with people that look like that. They went to college and high school and everything else with people like that. They date those people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I get it. But at the same time, if indeed we're trying to create diversity, especially in business, then wouldn't it behoove you to at least bring in some black faces in the leadership team, for instance, so that I always believe that phrase, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So my thing is, if I'm literally coming in and interviewing, and I do this all the time, when I go in and I interview, I like to show up a little bit early and just sit in reception and just watch people walk by,
Yeah,
and get a sense of,
works there.
who's at this company, and and typically, because it's in tech, it's typically where I end up. It's very few of us, if any. And certainly I'm also looking in the recruiting. If
Mhm.
I'm greeted by a black recruiter, I lick my chops a little bit, because I'm just like, okay, wait a minute now, they might actually, I won't have to jump through 3 or 4 more hoops. I want to dovetail off of that just a little bit, because
So,
I maybe it's an admission, but I have to admit, I've had to sort of almost create personas, like full on personas, to
oh yeah,
sort of get through the fucking interview process, because I know for a fact, if I don't see a black person, I know that my boss is white, his subordinate is white, and it's just white, 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 all the way down
right.
the line, that I do feel myself having to, kind of not go too urban in my speech, or not, you know, um, refer to things that I know for a fact you've probably done. You know what I
Right.
mean? Luckily, I've done enough in my life where actually I have real experience, where
That's
actually a
right.
lot of people don't have experience. So, and to me, that, especially now that I'm sort of
Yeah.
seeing all the hoops that I've had to jump through and all the shit I've had to normalize over the almost 51 years of my life, it angers me, because I'm like,
Yeah.
why should I have to dumb myself down? Um,
Well, we call that code switching.
Ooh,
So,
nice. I like that.
black folks, we've code switched since beginning the time
Right.
since we got here. And so, um, you do have to be careful of the references you make
Mhm.
in conversation, because a lot of times you're going to lose them because they don't know what the fuck you're
They
talking
have no
about.
clue. Exactly. Exactly.
Or you also have to be aware of how urban you want to be in that setting.
Right. Right.
And
And
so,
I say urban, I mean, it's just me living my life.
well,
It's not even that
how
deep.
how much black do you want to show?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And
And it's
so
been,
it's a balancing act that, unfortunately, we have gotten so adept at, because we have to live in two separate universes.
yeah.
Um, when we go back to our families and our friends and our neighborhoods, a lot of
Hmm.
times it's a whole different set of
It's an
rules.
exhale. Like
Oh yeah, you
it's
could
an
just relax.
exhale. You know, and I really want people to understand that. I mean, I don't want us to, you know, you and I having this conversation and people automatically checking out like, oh Lord, here we go again. Now
Right.
it's two of them.
Talking about some more black shit. God
Right,
damn.
exactly, really. You know, but what I want people to really understand is, you know, this there is a real anxiety around just literally a level of anxiety that is higher than any white person in this country walking out the front door every single day of your life.
Amen.
Please understand that that shit is exhausting. Like you don't even realize. So you guys want to talk about, um, you know, poor black communities and, people having higher mortality rates because of this and this and, oh, the obesity epidemic and all this other stuff. Well, how about this? Something that's not talked about. You try walking out your door every single day knowing that you're lesser than, you're looked at as lesser than, you can be treated and actually probably get away with, killing us, hurting us, Karening us, by calling cops just because you're pissed because someone called you out on not following the rules.
Right.
Um, you know, um, you know, not being chosen for jobs because of your color, not even being able to get in the front door to interview when you know for a fact that you were just as qualified, if not more, if not more so.
Mhm.
All of these things in aggregate add up over
Yeah.
time, over years. So I know for a fact that my hypertension, which has always been, my blood pressure has always been high for
Right.
many, many, many years, and it's I think low key. Kind of uh, my just all of this sort of shit that I have to go through every single day
Yeah.
is slightly responsible for that to some
It is.
degree.
We walk
And
around with more stress.
you
For sure.
do because you don't, it's just so weird how we talk about the word freedom. There
Hmm.
is no real freedom as a black person because you can't just walk out your door and just be, you know?
Yeah.
You
And
can't just be in public. You can't just be when you're in a store. You know what I mean? Because you know for a fact, and people don't want to accept that aren't melanin infused.
Mhm.
They don't want to accept the fact that yes, discrimination and bias and all of these things exist because they don't have any real reference to that.
Well,
Although, unless they're in a room with a bunch of black people. And
yeah.
then all of a sudden, that same fear and anxiety and everything else, they finally get a taste of, and then they, make a beeline as quickly as they can.
But
I don't
it's
get that
rare. It's
opportunity.
very rare, and it's situational. It's certainly not something that they have to adjust their lifestyle around.
Right.
And so, it's convenient for many that don't look like us to ignore the problem because it doesn't
It doesn't affect their
affect them.
at all.
And even when it comes to your attention, our human tendency is to, you know, look for something else as to a reason why.
Right.
Even when it comes to this police brutality and all, way before George Floyd,
Right.
of the countless events that happen,
Yeah.
there's always here's some of the most predictable responses is, well, he shouldn't have been resisting.
Right.
Well, he shouldn't have done a crime in the first place.
Right.
Or why was he there? Why didn't he just do what the officer said? All these reasons why to justify the taking of a life.
Mhm.
And here's the other thing: whenever we get killed, we die two deaths.
Yeah.
We die right there on the spot, and then shortly after, there's a character assassination
100%
that
every
happens
single time.
because he had a record and he did all these things. And with
Mhm.
George Floyd,
Right.
he threatened this pregnant woman or whatever.
Mhm.
He might have done all that shit. He might have been a horrible human being,
Mhm.
but there's a due process. And I always hear this thing, we're a nation of laws, or where's the fucking laws then?
There was none.
By the way, there's people that have done a way more heinous acts than he did,
Mhm.
and were able to get their due process, get taken in without being harmed or touched.
Exactly.
Hell, Jeffrey Dahmer literally ate motherfuckers,
Right.
and he
And
was
he lived. And he lived to go to prison.
he was arrested without a scratch,
Right.
and he had his due process, and he went to prison for it.
Hmm.
But there's so many examples of you know the others getting the benefit of the doubt
Yeah.
and the full treatment of our judicial system the way
Hmm.
it was supposed to go down versus how we experience our judicial system, which is you know justice right there on the street. In the case with George Floyd, by the
Yeah.
hands of this one asshole or four of them
Right.
that sit there and killed this man.
Right.
um like I said, no matter what he did, there's a process.
Right.
You can shoot up a church, but man, and you take him to go get Burger King, and
Like,
he still.
who does
So
that? Like, that was, I still can't even reconcile that one myself,
so
but
don't talk to me about, well, what did he do?
right.
Well, what the fuck did these other guys do?
Right. Right.
And I think that what's caused such an uproar or this just explosion, not just here but
Hmm.
around the
It's
globe,
around the world.
is that it took something so blatant, and because there's no room for any of those excuses.
Mm.
He wasn't resisting. The other things you hear is, oh, the cop, I feared for my life, I had to shoot him. Well, no one's life was in danger, or no one was fearing for their life. He
Right.
wasn't resisting. There
Right.
wasn't any of those things that normally they use. And then, if all else fails, they pull out of their ass. Well, what about the kids that got shot in Chicago last week? As if that has anything to do with anything. That's a problem that needs to be addressed. But
100%.
why are we talking about that?
Right. Right.
That's always the fallback response. I can bank on the responses you'll get
Hmm.
a lot of times. It's usually one of those four,
Yeah.
one of those 4 or 5.
It's true.
It goes down. Well, he shouldn't have resisted. The cop feared for his life.
Exactly.
Have a tough job. And
Right.
there's just a few bad apples. Well, then why aren't the good fucking apples saying anything?
Exactly. Well put.
Why are they okay being associated with bad apples?
Exactly. Exactly.
So
And that's, I guess, again, there's so many layers of this onion. We could talk about, for instance, these police unions that protect bad cops. We can talk about, how that blue wall is a very strong blue wall. Yes, I have friends who are law enforcement officers. I
yeah,
absolutely love them. I love the job that they do. I love the fact that, yes, I can pretty much bank on calling 911 and someone showing up. I'm incredibly respectful to police officers. I've actually dated a few. But, my whole point with all of this is, again, there's so much dismantling of old ideals and things that we've held as truth for
right,
so many years of our lives, that our parents taught us, that our schools reinforce, that
right.
that society reinforces, that therein for me lies the problem
Mm,
with all of this.
yeah.
In that, as much as I want to be an optimist and
Mm,
say, oh yay, we're having these great conversations, and you know I have a feeling this might be the time, that I keep hearing that, especially with people, by people of color, this may be the moment that,
mm.
this changes everything.
Our
Yes,
watershed moment.
please let that be true. But having been on this earth for 51 years as of next Wednesday, I it's not even skepticism. It's, for me, it's pragmatism. I'm just like,
Right.
you know what? This is going to be a thing.
Hmm.
I'm glad it's a thing. But unless there is real action by people that don't look like us, I want to say this and I want people to grasp this. Racism right now is not our problem.
Yeah, not on us.
Not our problem. These are your laws. These old construct laws dating all the way back to 400 years ago that
Mm,
have morphed to an extent but are still oppressive to another race and other races. This is not our problem. So unless y'all want to take on each other and fix
right.
it within the constructs that you have, we can't do anything about this except continue to be killed and continue to have that shit videotaped and continue to create all this outrage, continue to create all these marches, which are then being, maligned as,
Right.
opportunities for people to loot and act up.
Right.
missing the point completely. I can't even, because that will send me into quite the foul mouth diatribe. Um,
What
but you know,
the looting? Which
oh,
part?
the whole looting thing. I cannot,
You know,
because
when I see the videos, these aren't even black people out there.
oh my god, you know,
I'm talking even the ones that are raising all the hell.
yeah.
I'm like, these aren't even black folks. Which,
But
hey,
you know,
I appreciate the participation, but
right,
let's not lose why we're out there in the first place.
exactly,
And I think
exactly.
a lot of that gets lost.
I can't remember the name of the young lady who did that. The most beautiful diatribe I've ever seen in my entire life. In fact, she should be deitized because she was that good. Where she talked about, I can't remember. I know she was in front of like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or some museum or something like that. But you know,
Oh, the
she
black
said,
woman.
"Yes, you know what I'm talking about."
Yeah,
God, I can't believe I can't remember her name. Michelle something or Kimberly something.
yeah, I remember
Remember,
her.
but
Yeah.
the one thing that she said that really, really stuck with me is about the looters. It's like, you know, this isn't even about the looting. What we need to be asking is, when you see the looting, why are we not breaking that down? Why are people looting?
Right.
Why are people so poor and so desperate that they feel that the only way they can get something of that quality is they can only do it when there is, you know, an opportunity. And the funny thing is, the opportunity was created by the people who aren't even black, a lot of them, busting out windows and doing all this other stuff and basically opening the door. Not saying that it's right
Right.
to go and take anyone else's property, but again, you know, if indeed these people have been so maligned for most of their lives,
Mm.
so you know, underappreciated, under educated, unfortunately, you know, undercompensated, et cetera, then hell yeah, they're going to go into that store, grab that $150 pair of Nikes they would never be able to afford,
Right.
and can't afford because they're, you know, for whatever reason, and be on their jolly little way.
Well, if we're talking about the same woman, it was
We
the
are.
one that talked about the breaking of the social contract.
Exactly. That's her.
Yeah, and he said, "Hey, there's in every society there's a contract, among society
Yep.
that we'll follow the rules. You provide us, basic safety and infrastructure and things
Right.
of that nature.
Right.
But when you target and brutalize a section of the population, then that contract is essentially broken.
Right.
And so you can't hold people to a standard that you're not willing to hold yourself to.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so, uh, the most poignant thing that stood out of what she said, "You're lucky we just looking for equality and not
Not
revenge."
revenge. And the funny thing is,
I was like, "Ooh,
where that was deep, and that was the last sentence. I was like,
ew, that shit."
I'm fresh out of popcorn because I pretty much did that right there. But
And she's right.
and
All
she's
we asking for is equality. We're not even
exactly.
trying, to strike back an eye for an eye shit.
Not at all. And my thing is
But
this. I mean,
we'll start with the equality.
exactly. We'll start there, you know, and I'm hoping that this is the time that it actually lasts. But you know, to her credit, and I'm glad she actually said that, because, you know, we've never really sought revenge. You know, we've been revenged or avenged, or we haven't actually been avenged. But you know, for instance, when she actually talked about what was it, is it Rosewood
Mhm.
and
Tulsa,
Black Wall Street,
yep,
exactly, and
Tulsa,
Tulsa,
Oklahoma.
you
Mhm.
know, that was us doing our thing. That was us creating our own wealth. That was us, you know,
Right.
showing that, yeah, we can go, you know, go toe to toe. You can still do you. Let us do us, and we can coexist.
We can
But
we can do that.
right, but what happened? Isn't it funny how the watershed moments are basically the exact same Karenism that we're seeing right now? Two white women, one on an
Mhm.
elevator saying that she was, you know, assaulted, which may
Mm.
or may not have happened. I wasn't there.
Right.
You know, hey, it is what it is.
Right.
That was one, and then another one was, you know, what was it? A woman who was accusing a black man of raping her, but was
Mm.
actually potentially or beating her up, I think is what it was. But
Yeah.
you know, the facts actually came out that her husband was abusive and that the
Oh.
bruises that probably potentially came from him. And
Mm.
she basically blamed it on, you know, someone black. And then of course, both cities got burned to a crisp, and you know, hundreds of people lost their lives. So, you know, I guess, you know, for me, and yes, this is all history, and yes, people will gloss over and be like, oh my god, this is too much. Like, just everybody just be nice, you know. Stop, everyone just don't be racist for, you know. You know, it just doesn't work like that. And I feel like now, as a country, we are so just broken, you know,
We are.
from a purely a government standpoint. I mean, with that red thing in the office at the moment, I just don't. I've seen how far backward we've actually devolved in the
Yeah.
4 years of this administration, and now
I don't know
it's
if we've gone backwards. I think we've just been more exposed.
oh baloney, we've gone backward.
I,
we've
I, I don't think anything that is
we've got
happening or
lynching. What are we talking about right now?
well, true, but I think that those attitudes have
Yeah.
always been there.
Oh, 100%.
Now
100%.
they're just stirred up and they've gotten emboldened,
Right. Right.
but they were always there.
Right.
So I think things have been revealed.
True.
Um, but I don't know if we've gone backwards because we've had this since the beginning.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
my thing
yeah.
is this: when it comes to this whole idea of privilege,
Mhm.
a lot of people they get triggered by that word, white privilege. What do you
Right.
mean, Kelly? I've worked all my life, or
Right.
no one gave me shit, because the word privilege implies that you've been given something.
Exactly.
And so I said, okay, well, let's not say privilege. Let's say advantage.
Right.
Clearly, you can see that there's an advantage here
Mhm.
because even though you may not have been given anything because you're white,
Right.
it didn't serve as an obstacle either.
Exactly.
And so if you and I said the equivalent would be if you and I are getting ready to run a race side by side, and two things can happen, or I can say this in two analogies. We can run the race, but you have a free lane.
Mhm.
I have all sorts of obstacles and things to navigate and jump over and stuff, and I just gonna have a harder time running a race
Mhm.
against you who has nothing in front of them. Problem is when people on the sidelines say, well, Kelly, why aren't you running as fast as the other guy?
Right.
Or when you look at it from a historical context, we're both getting ready to run a race, but then 5 minutes before the gun goes off, someone comes and beats the shit out of the one racer.
Mhm.
Gun goes off, go.
Right.
And then, well, why isn't he running as fast?
Right. He looks to have a limp. Right.
Why aren't you pulling yourselves up by your bootstraps?
Right. Right.
Why don't
Right.
why aren't you as successful or have as much wealth
Mhm.
or as educated
Right.
or all these other things that get pointed to
Right.
when you just beat the shit out of that person, not metaphorically or from a social standpoint,
Right.
and then expect them to perform at the same level?
Agreed.
Now, because we are special and unique and resilient and all those other things, we run the race any fucking way. Matter of
Exactly.
fact, there's still some people we can still beat.
Yep. Beat up.
Right. But please don't assess my lane and my access to the finish line, the same as someone who has nothing in front of them.
No obstacles. Exactly.
And so you may not call it privilege. You don't want to use that word, fine.
Yeah.
But you can certainly say it's an advantage. You can certainly say that, let's say you don't want to assign any word. You can assign that this other person is disadvantaged.
Mhm.
I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
And that's the reality that people don't want to look at,
Right.
because it does put things in a different frame.
Right. And I think that's another thing too, is I don't understand um this need to not have discomfort in your life, especially around your thinking. You know, I just don't. I The easy way out is never typically the right way out, you
Right.
know? And I guess for me, a lot of my disappointment comes from the people who are tapping out, the people who are, hearing privilege and being like, oh God, I'm done, or, we've all got the same advantage, we've all got the same opportunities in this world. That's what the United States is built on,
It's
is,
America, it's all
opportunity
about.
in America. Look at, this person started his own market and now he's like a multimillionaire. This person did this. I am not saying that that is not the case, that
Right.
yes, people do come to this country from other countries and eke out not only an existence, but also can become quite wealthy. But the one thing that they do, and it's a lot of times, sadly, it's not Blacks, because we do need to support each other way more than we're doing.
Right.
But, what they do is they circle wagons. They're like, okay, well, we've kind of figured out that, they don't really like us that much being here. Cool. So what we're going to do is we'll lay low. We'll, frequent each other's businesses. We'll help each other grow. We'll educate each other. We'll, do what we do, and we'll build our wealth from within our little circle.
They
And
follow the fucking blueprint.
exactly.
It's a blueprint that's been followed all over this country.
Right.
And, I think we could benefit from following those examples.
100%.
I
100%.
talk about that all the time, especially,
Mhm.
here in LA, you're downtown, there's a Chinatown there.
It's fantastic.
There's a Japantown,
Yep. Where's Blacktown?
where Koreatown.
Right.
There's
Exactly.
a little Philippines right there by
Hmm.
the lake.
I love it. Exactly.
Um, Down in Orange County, you have a little Vietnam.
Hmm.
You have a little Tijuana.
Yep.
You have all these
Little.
communities,
Yeah.
and they follow the same basic blueprint.
Hmm.
And so,
Keep it tight.
the first thing you do, they establish an economic base.
Yep.
They do they set up businesses.
Hmm.
I think out of the civil rights movement, as much good that came out of it, the thing that I think damaged us the most as people, as Black people,
Yeah.
is that we got distracted on which fight we should have been waging, or which
Yeah.
war we should have been waging.
Yeah.
There shouldn't have been so much emphasis on equality
Right.
necessarily. Should have been really more about economics,
Exactly.
about the money.
Yeah.
Because when I'll take Chinese, for example, right here in San Gabriel Valley, they don't give a fuck about if you like them or not.
Right.
They don't care if that you let them sit next to you at their lunch counters or at the front of the fucking bus. Who gives a fuck? You should have
Right.
been worried about starting your own bus company.
Right.
If you were powerful enough to shut that shit down and change the laws, then you had enough economic base to start your own shit,
Right.
instead of worrying about letting people sit next to you. Fuck them.
Right.
They don't want to sit next to you. Fuck them.
Fine. Exactly.
You don't have to say, because the laws aren't going to change attitudes. They're not going to all of a sudden start liking you the next day because the law
Right.
changed.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
But let them keep their bus. We'll keep, great. You want us to make? We'll have our own fucking bus.
Exactly. Because guess
Go
what?
to Chinatown. They have their own businesses. They have to put their money in their own
Home
bank.
banks. Exactly.
They are completely self-reliant to the extent that everything is in Chinese.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Every sign.
Yep.
Every menu. You know what that says? That means we don't really need you.
Right. That's exactly right.
We don't want you knowing what the fuck's going on here. We're gonna put the shit in Chinese.
Exactly. Exactly.
We don't want your money.
Right. Because we're good. We're good.
We're good.
We'll take your money if you want to come on and throw it in, but we don't need it.
We don't need it.
Right.
That's the ultimate fuck you.
Yeah, it is. It is actually. Especially since this is a very money centric nation specifically.
It's all about money. It's always been about the
100%. 100%.
So that's a model that not the Koreans have done the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Japanese have done the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
All across this country, immigrants come here and they do what's natural.
Yeah.
They do shit amongst their own. Now it's a little harder here because we're dispersed.
Yes.
As far as Black folks.
Of course.
But there's still a way we can take pieces of that model and implement. What's encouraging, you're seeing more of that.
Yeah.
But we need to speed this up because we got a lot.
We're late. Exactly. And for me, I guess, again, that's one of my bigger disappointments is, through all of this, I maybe I sort of idealistically thought that our star power would
Mm,
somehow really step up and really, be outraged, conspicuously
mm.
outraged. But I,
They have too much to lose.
yeah, I
Too
get
much
that.
to lose.
I get that, but at the same time, that's really that sort of sacrifice is what's needed. I don't know how else to put it.
Well, now you're getting to a whole nother, moral dilemma as far as
Mhm.
what do I sacrifice? Do I sacrifice everything for my people?
Right.
And I that's an individual thing. I don't
That's
say
fair.
what
That's fair.
anyone should do with their money or with
That's
their,
fair.
so that's not for me to say.
No, I get that.
But at some point you may find yourself all alone out there.
That's my other point. And my thing is, again, even if I look at it as sort of what I call leader ants, meaning
Mhm.
there should have been at least two or three that were just like, fuck it, I'm going for it. You know what I mean? I'm
Right,
going to risk my um whatever stature, or risk being labeled this or that,
right.
uh because it's the right thing to do. And I just didn't see it. I saw a couple, but I didn't see it to the degree that I was kind of expecting it.
That you
And
thought you should have. Well, Dave Chappelle kind of took the other route.
I liked his route.
He's like, you know what? No one wants to hear from me.
Right.
This is the people's,
Mhm.
thing. And, as a celebrity, he felt that it was a time for him to just sit and shut up.
Right. But the one thing I do like about Dave Chappelle is, in his own way, he's actually already always been out kind of on the front lines for
Oh
us.
yeah. He's
You know
always
what I
been
mean? So
very
it's like
vocal.
I give him a pass because I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you can sit down and watch and hope that
Because he's done his rotation.
you've done your rotation, right?
Okay.
You
He's
you've
done a lot. Okay,
done
you get
your
to one
SEAL
thing.
team. Now you get to relax,
Some of them
and
thing done their rotation.
he does exactly. And that's my whole point is, again, it's one of those things where it's like, I more than anything, I just want, and specifically around black people, so all the white people watching this, relax. But I really want black people to sort of understand that, really, first of all, understand the game, go back, retrace your history. I did, 3 straight weeks of like hardcore historical learning about, from the second we hit the shore
Right.
until, George Floyd. And it of course sickened me, how poorly we were treated as specifically black women.
Right.
But up to this point, I really wish that we wouldn't prioritize, instead of all this making money, bitches and hoes, hookers and blow, and all this other stuff that we kind of glorify in our lyrics.
Yeah.
That we actually take all of that wealth, and take all of that, wealth of information more than anything else,
Right.
and really go back to, creating our own Motowns, creating, these institutions, who historically black colleges are going under because there's no funding. All of this stuff that we are just sort of letting just, kind of fall by the wayside, when there is tons of black spending power. We spend so much money on freaking weave. Like, let's go there if we have to. I used to rock one, I know. And all of this stuff where it's like, if we could really just focus our intention, our
Mhm.
attention, and our money, kind of in the Japanese model, kind of in the Chinese model, kind of in the Indian, the Latino, etc. model, where we kind of circle wagons and really just focus on building ourselves up, learning how to create these little micro economies, and scaling those. I
Right.
think we would be so much better off. But we're still just so like, I don't know if it's that we're broken. I don't like using that, but I kind of do.
We're damaged.
Yeah, we're definitely
Uh,
damaged. You know,
and
damaged and stressed and
there
everything else in between.
all of it. And I talked about the economics of it, in that, you have to establish an economic base. That's just one of the four pillars that I feel would benefit us, and it's part of the blueprint. The other part of it is you have to establish a political base,
Mhm.
because
Very true.
we are way more affected by the local sheriff and mayor and city councilman and their decisions than we are who's president.
Right. Right.
You know, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, it doesn't matter. They don't affect our day to day.
Right.
But that
True.
mayor does.
Yeah.
That sheriff does.
Absolutely.
You know, the city council, superintendent, all those. So if you look in these communities where they have established an economic base, they also have a strong political base.
Very true.
And everybody on that city council, what do they look like?
Right. Right.
That local state representative or assembly person, what do they look like?
Right.
They're represented in those communities.
Right.
And so you have to establish a political base because you need people in those offices that support your interests.
Right.
And we, one, don't participate in the political process. Two,
because we don't believe in it.
We allow people to exist and to continue to exist in these positions that do not hold our interest in areas where we're 80, 90% of the population. That should never happen.
Agree.
Ever happen. You know, because if that sheriff in Ferguson created an environment with that police department that said it was okay to go out and brutalize Black folks, then he should have been voted out. That's an elected position.
Right.
You know, there's no reason in a Black city that you can't elect someone who holds your interest. But politics is about money.
Yeah.
It's a money game. And I say, hey, well, you just alluded to with the whole star power. If we use just a small percentage of that star power, and the example I used before was that in the NFL, NFL represents 75% of Black players,
right,
or comprise the NFL.
Yeah,
there's about $3 billion in salaries that get paid out in the NFL every year. Every year, $3 billion in salaries. About 2.2 of that goes into the hands of Black players. Just the NFL, $2.2 billion goes into the hands of Black players every year.
Right.
If you took 10% of those salaries, $220 million every year, and you started allocating those funds to causes and political positions, and to change out people in areas that do not have your interest,
right,
I promise you, you will get hurt. Because right now, people out there protesting shit, they don't know what the fuck you want. They don't even, they're not even trying. But if you start waving around money, now you're speaking the language. Because now you're speaking the language that this country has understood from the beginning of time, and it's the language of dollars and cents.
Exactly.
You have to talk the language. And so when you start spending money to get people in office, now you're speaking the fucking language.
Right.
Trust me, that shit gets heard.
Yeah.
And your interests now are at the front of the conversation.
Right.
Because it's a money game.
Right.
But again, that's taking control of the political infrastructure in the areas that serve our folks. The other thing is we need control of the institutions. You need to know to have control over what your kids are learning.
Right.
You know, your grocery stores, your post offices, things of that way. You know that in I wouldn't have believed it. I saw it with my own fucking eyes. In a lot of schools now, they're not even using the word slave anymore.
They're not, which is crazy to me.
Workers. I saw it in my own kids' textbooks. I'm like, what the fuck is that shit? Because I didn't even know. My kid asked me, this was a couple of years ago. He said, yeah, Dad, you know, had a question about these workers back in I didn't even know what the fuck he was trying to do.
Workers.
Like, what are you talking about, some workers? What do you mean?
Right.
Yeah, these workers and blah. And I was like, let me see this book. I started looking at it, I'm like, holy shit. They're completely rewriting history. No, son, these weren't fucking workers. They were slaves.
Right. Now let me give you the real.
Let me tell you the real stories. You're not walking out of here with some bullshit they're trying to teach you at school, some watered down shit to make them feel good about the fact that no, this was some brutal shit.
Right.
That we refuse to own.
Right. Right.
And so again, you have to take control of the institutions of what your kids are learning, because this shit gets perpetuated.
It does, clearly. you know. And my thing is, how are kids that actually did go through that watered down version, you know, how are they actually seeing their history? Are they even seeing their history? Because their history is, you
They're
know,
lost.
has been watered down in school. You know, most aren't trying to look you know, beyond that until it becomes a thing like it
They're
is
lost.
now. And to me, that's the part that's heartbreaking, is because there's a lot of, we're putting out lost kids, and
Hmm.
that's not right. That's just not right. You know,
It's
we're
not
putting
right.
out kids that see this shit, that have no real context of why it even happened or existed, or how it links, the past links to the present.
They don't have any context, and the other thing is, and I think what's more damaging is what they teach in school. As far as Black history is concerned, Black people's history starts the moment they landed here as slaves.
Right.
There's a whole all that
You
thousands
missed
of years of
all the other part of the history.
just erase all that shit. You know, let's just start from here.
Yeah.
And so, as parents, you have to supplement what your kids are learning. You have
Mhm.
to teach them about where they come from. You have
Right.
to teach them, you know, about all the history that happened before you even got here.
Mhm.
There's so much that happened before we even landed here, but they don't even
Exactly.
tell you that shit.
Exactly.
So you have to teach, uh, you have to supplement that yourself because they're not going to learn it at school.
They're not, you know?
And the shit that they do learn has them thinking, we'll tell you earlier about that cloud over their head.
Right.
Now it's just, okay, it's all negative.
Right.
You know, every great thing that's ever happened in history is that,
Mhm.
you know, according to the, you know, the history books that
Yeah.
in school, was done by somebody white.
Right. Exactly.
And then you got this little small section of people that might have done a few little things,
Like
but
a
all the
few little
real
things.
good shit, the real important shit
Mhm. White people. Exactly. Black, white Jesus too, you know?
is written, you know, within that frame.
Yeah.
And so you have to be really careful as to the messages that you want your child to walk this planet with,
Right.
because you're not going to get the right story a lot of times, especially if they're, you know, people of color.
Right.
Because here's the thing, I guarantee you, Jewish kids know their history.
Oh, yes, they do.
I don't give a fuck what they teach in their school.
Exactly.
Their parents make goddamn sure
Right.
that they know what happened.
Exactly.
They never forget.
Exactly. Exactly. And, you know, therein kind of lies yet another one of our issues. So, you know, so I'm just kind of curious, like, and I guess I can ask you, you've done actually quite well. Um, I guess I'm now trying to rationalize what's the point. Meaning, I I really just don't see the point of being in this country. Like, it has hit me that hard, you know, typically because I mean, I've worked my entire life, you know, black gay man in the C-suite of some rather large corporations for my
Yeah,
entire working career. So you know, I've done everything right, if you will. You know, I drank the Kool-Aid, I learned how to maneuver, I learned ways around, you
yeah,
know, I never fucked anybody over to my knowledge. You know, and I was able to get to a point where I was bumping my head on a glass ceiling. And
yeah,
to me, you know, that was validating to an extent.
yeah,
But, you know, unfortunately, all of that kind of got unraveled with all of this stuff, you know, since George Floyd, because I just thought about it and I'm like, well, here's the thing. Every other country that I've visited, not that other countries are perfect, but every other country that I visited, I've experienced far less full
yeah,
on, you know, even covert and not so covert racism.
yeah,
Even though obviously there are problems with racism all over the world.
yeah, for sure.
I just don't see myself spending the rest of my life in a country that has so many problems and has so much work to do that isn't even my work. And
Hmm.
I'm such a control freak that since it's not my work, I don't trust that anyone is going to work as hard to fucking fix it as I will.
Yeah,
So I've made the conscious decision. I'm grabbing my mother, I'm grabbing my shit, and I'm going to
hell out of here.
change my citizenship. I just because, and that's more of a protest
Mhm.
to the lack of, you know, the lack of quote unquote progress that we've made, and that I still am not convinced is going to be made in the remainder of my lifetime. I'd
I
much rather, you know, kind of draw that line in the sand of like, you know what, I gave y'all 50 fucking years of my life to figure it out. You still didn't. So peace, and that to me seems like a very rational decision, but other people are looking at me like, oh my God, you're giving up on the country that made you, and all this other shit. I'm just like, they didn't make me move. I made myself within the construct that, I was handed. How about that?
Well, let me first say that this is a great country, even with all its flaws.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Greatest country I could have ever,
and to be clear, it has provided me quite a good present, so to speak. Like even the abilities and the opportunities and chances that I've had to get to where I am right now, I would probably never have gotten in any other country. So
right. So I have to acknowledge that. That said, I've often felt the same way as you in that shit. I've traveled a lot and I've experienced what it's like to spend time outside of this country. And I have to say, the thought of moving to another country actually has some appeal. Because not only just from from a racial standpoint, in general, I just feel safer.
Right. Exactly. Exactly right.
Which is odd because when you talk to most Americans, they're like, so I was went to Vietnam, took my family to Vietnam a couple of years ago. And one of the things that almost always comes up when I would talk to people is like, oh, did you feel safe? Were you worried about your kids? And these kinds of questions. And I tell them, I was like, I felt safer and I felt my kids were safer there than I ever do when I'm here.
Yeah.
I didn't have the same anxiety like you. Then every time you walk out the door, and literally as a black man, especially as a black man, I don't think people realize the anxiety that you have just in the back of your head. Every time I walk out of my door,
every time
I have to think, am I coming back? Is this the day? Is this the day I might get pulled over and some shit go left and I don't make it back home for some bullshit.
Right.
It's the day to day.
Right.
It's the day to day when because I take walks early in the morning sometimes around this business park by my house. Because that's just how I like to clear my head. And the more stressed I am, the more walks I go on.
Right.
But I always think is today to day. Someone's gonna make some Karen gonna make a phone call. And is there some black man?
It's suspicious black man
walking the parking lot at
fast, like he stole something.
Is today that day?
Yeah.
And so that's always in the back of my mind every time I leave my house. And it's even scarier to know that once my children become of driving age, when they leave the house,
right?
I can't sleep until they get back.
Right.
And so when I factor all of that in and I compare it to my experiences when I'm outside the country, it's just a lot less stressful. I don't feel that I just don't feel the same levels of anxiety, and I don't feel the same level of worry for my kids.
Right.
So I completely get it. I totally get it. Now, whether or not I'll do it, I don't know. I strongly considered moving outside the country.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. And for me, I mean, I guess it's easier for me in the sense that, the businesses that I've set up can be done from anywhere in the world, to be honest with you. And my goal has always been, I do want different citizenship. Again, that's just my FU. But I would still obviously like to keep, one or at least one of my businesses in the United States and run it and come here. My mom is probably not going to go to, Portugal or Auckland, although she's actually kind of on it with me about this whole Portugal thing. But,
Portugal, I like Spain.
I'm right over the border. So you move to Spain, I'll live in Portugal and we'll hang out,
General area.
So that's perfect. So I think, again, it's just one of those things where, and it's basically, we already covered the point, but I thought about it too as you were talking about that, and I'm like, okay, well, there's that whole part of just even getting from A to B, and then I think about, okay, then add on the layer of being in business.
Mhm.
There's anxiety around that as well. Don't be too
Yeah,
urban. Don't say the wrong thing.
right.
Prepare that someone is going to misunderstand you.
Mhm.
Careful with that volume, because black people are loud. Uh, you
Right.
know, uh, you know. Trying not to almost be too smart for some people,
Right.
because that will then get you sort of put on that pile, so to speak. There's just so much anxiety around all of it, and for me, I guess I'm at the point now where I do get a bit of an exhale because I'm my own boss, so I don't have to worry about
Right.
fucking answering to anybody except my customers.
Yep.
And you know I think, again, just being in these countries where I don't have to think that hard.
Yeah.
Half of it for me is just processing. I think all the time. So,
Mhm.
you know, along with that anxiety is a lot of thinking and a lot of just like brain
Yeah.
power that's like whizzing wheels in my head about,
Absolutely.
making money, but then also trying not to, piss anybody off or get slaughtered, for some reason.
Right.
So it's for me, I guess I've just reached that point where maybe I'm tapping out, maybe I'm being a big fat hypocrite, but i
You know,
just i just
you
don't see the value. I really
you
don't.
might you might change your mind.
Right.
You get that second win and
Yeah.
ready to fight the fight.
Yeah.
But it's exhausting. I
Yeah.
mean, it's exhausting. Even just all the conversations I've had recently, um, in trying to get people to see the fucking obvious is exhausting.
It is.
And so uh I get it. And at the same time, you know, over the years, the the less I give a fuck,
Yeah.
the less stress I have.
And thank you for saying that,
Hmm.
because I think maybe that sums up all of this, because maybe I got to a point where I just didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I figured out a way to beat the construct,
Hmm.
do it in a way where I could keep my integrity intact,
Hmm.
make the money that I've always wanted to make,
Yeah.
uh, create my own little stamp on whatever it is that I was trying to do, which I've done.
Yeah.
Um, but I think all of this sort of unearthed me having to care,
Right.
you know, and
Yeah.
being
Well,
pulled on. It's
what is
crazy.
what it's done for me is I don't know if care is the right term for me, but I
Yeah.
think has caused me to make an effort to. I'm trying to think of the right analogy for. Okay, come on, let's pull. Let's get this. This is going to benefit all of us
Right.
if we can all get on the same
Right.
page.
Right.
And it has caused me to want to reach out and help people get to that place,
Right.
emotionally or psychologically,
Right.
that and it's hard. It's a never ending like siege that is exhausting, and it just drains the shit out of you.
It does.
And sometimes you just get angry and say, fuck it.
Just exactly. And I think a lot of, for black people, that's been a lot of people's experience, because I think people really do want to do right by one another. I don't think this is some
Yeah.
grand plan by white people to just oppress black people. I think,
No.
unfortunately, what it is the sort of vehicles for the oppression are there, but they're not conspicuous to people. And since it doesn't benefit them, like in their financial pocketbooks or whatever else, to
Right.
sort of change those constructs, then that's something they can back burner. Like, be kind of aware of it, but if it's not really going to, like, in some way enhance their present or future, eh, and
Well,
sorry, I
but
don't
they
want to boil
also
it down to, obviously I don't want to piss anybody off with that, but
but they benefit from it.
they don't realize that they do, but they do.
And
Most
that's
most
the
don't
key.
realize they do, that they do.
Is that because the argument is that, well, I never owned slaves. You've never been a slave. Why are we talking about some shit that's for people that
For that happened in all of our pasts, right?
right, you're right. I've never been a slave.
Mm,
I've done pretty well.
right.
You've never owned a slave.
Hmm.
That's cool. But the system that we all operate within
Hmm.
was specifically
To this
designed
day.
to keep people like me down, and it is specifically designed for the benefit of people like you,
Hmm.
and you do benefit from this system,
You do,
whether
because
you
it still
ask for it
exists.
or not.
It still
And so the
exists.
thing is, you may not have built it, you may not have owned slaves, but you still benefit from it, and you still refuse to change it in a way so that it's inclusive, so that we all benefit,
Right.
because you have the luxury of ignoring it
Right. I don't.
and still benefiting.
Exactly.
And that's the thing where, hey, if they
And
did nothing, what did they lose?
right.
Not a damn thing.
Nothing at all, you know? And the flip side of that is, I don't have the luxury of any of that. And I certainly don't benefit. If anything, it's to my detriment.
It's to my detriment. The system is designed. The system works the way it was built to.
Hmm. It's quite effective.
It's
Like,
very effective.
right.
Very efficient.
It's so funny. One of my ex bosses put something. I It was everything I could do not to chime in, but he had said something like, praising July 4th and saying, basically, and that's a paraphrase, and I apologize if he's actually watching this. I doubt it, but he said something that to the extent of, uh, keep in mind that our founding fathers created this construct in such a way where it would benefit us all, and all we need to do is really sort of go back to that construct and have discussions about it or whatever, and massage it in such a way where it actually is beneficial to us all. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, what planet are you on right now? Because that ain't it, boo. I again, it's I think the idealism of it all is kind of what's getting in the way. We can talk about, and I'm sorry, I mean, we're just talking forever, and I'm just gonna keep talking until you get sick of me. But
Right.
when we talk about these statues and these names of military bases and all this other stuff with Confederate heroes, and all of that, I think again, it's that idealism, that sort of very, that sort of idealist vision of this country
Right.
that is still kind of pervasive in some way, played out in those constructs. We glorify the Elon Musks and the Bill Gateses and
Right.
the Jack Dorseys of the world and all of that, because they fit that construct. They fit that model, that
Right.
beautiful model. Oprah somehow made it into there, so she got her own little spot on her own
Yeah.
little Mount Rushmore. But she, again, it's one of those things where one out of like how many blacks are on the billionaires list.
Right.
It's again, we need to sort of realize that the construct is set up in such a way, media is set up in such a way, all sort of major organizations and big conglomerates are set up in such a way where they have that very golden child um uh sort of vision
Right.
around them. And that's the vision of true success. True success is what looks like that. It doesn't
Right.
necessarily look like us,
Right.
though we help to build a lot of that success based on the work that we do, and all
Well,
that.
there's the ideal of America,
Yeah.
um, and the dream of America,
Right.
and then there's the reality of America, and these are two different things, and it wasn't built for everyone, but I think that there is some desire across the board to have this benefit everyone. It's just I think where the difference comes is who's willing to
Who's going
make
to do it?
effort to actually do it.
Exactly. And that's actually very powerful, because I think you're right. I think luckily, because of this sort of change in generations,
Mhm.
I think a lot of our younger generation really they don't want to go down this road. You know what I mean? They
Right.
really don't want to go down this road. It's like they're just different. They think differently. They
They do.
there's more integration. They don't see maybe the same way that we see the race inequities.
Right.
It's just one of those things where I think if we gave them more power, they would kind of figure it out for us, to be honest
Right.
with you. But, but at the same time, I think we still we still will always kind of fall into that unless this group, and I'm hoping because of all of this new wokeness that everyone else that isn't black is having,
Yeah.
that they really do dive into this. I mean, I think, I'll be honest with you, I'm just going to lay the cards on the table right now. If indeed November 3rd looks like it should, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? People get their asses off the couch and they go out and actually vote, or get your damn, mail-in ballots. They're
Right.
quite convenient. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You know, and if we vote, and we vote in such a way where at least at the White House level, we can make that change. Um, Even with what we have available, um, then fine. Let's start there. But you're
Right.
absolutely right.
Start.
We need to get into these municipalities. We need to start putting some of these younger kids, the brilliant ones, that
Yeah.
with all these great ideas, into these local smaller elections, having them win, having them continue to like build this sort of system of wokeness, start changing some of the laws that are obviously racist, et cetera, et cetera. That's really
Yeah.
the only way it's going to work out. So I'll watch from Portugal. Y'all tell me how that looks. I'll pop over every now and then and say, hey, what's up? But again, I ain't trying to sit here and wait for that. That's too damn long, child.
I
I,
know.
I posted something. It was oh my god, I keep forgetting his name, and I'm not even going to say it now because I'm embarrassed. But he had a quote where he said something. He's like, I'm 60 years old. I'm not going to live another 60 years. My father's been through this. My mother's been through this. My aunt, my uncle, my
Yeah.
nephews. They're all this. How long do you need for your progress?
Oh yeah, it was
Uh,
James Baldwin.
James Baldwin. Sorry.
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
oh my
So I
God. Okay, go ahead. Start throwing your rocks.
remember.
I know it was James. I just keep mixing
Yeah.
him with someone else that I love.
Yeah. He said, how much more time you want?
And that was how many years ago? The man's been dead for what, 30 years, 40 years? It's like, come on.
Well,
You
you
know,
see
that's why
now
I run out of juice, y'all. I ain't got time for this.
you touching on something bigger.
Am I? It's the same problem.
Same problem, but different focus, different reason. Because
Right.
here's the thing, and this might be for a whole nother podcast.
Oh, we'll have one.
Because this whole even the word white
Mhm.
it was invented in the 1600s.
Was it 1698 or something like that? Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And the whole construct of white and black is manufactured.
True.
And when you look at race, when you look at um, socioeconomic, you know, tension,
Mhm.
all of that is really by design, because the real powers that be realize that if we can keep them fighting,
Mhm.
we can take the money. And I'll say it again, this all comes down to economics.
It is.
It's really not about white and black. We get distracted by white and black, and of
Right.
course, and obviously there's some issues there.
Yeah.
But the bigger picture, if you zoom out
Mhm.
and see what's really going on, it's not about black and white at all. It's about grabbing the money.
Right.
Because if we're distracted fighting each other,
Yeah.
no one's saying, hey, look at this guy getting away with all the money, or these people
Mhm.
taking all the money or controlling all the land. It's about power and money.
Right.
And so we have actually more in common from a socioeconomic strata, people
Yeah.
that share the same socioeconomic strata,
Yep.
than we do people that share the same color.
Right.
So, for instance, Donald Trump or Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, they have a whole lot more in common with a Jay-Z or some other black, an Oprah Winfrey,
Mhm.
or someone that is in that economic strata,
Right.
than they would Elon Musk and someone that lives in a trailer.
Right.
They have nothing in common whatsoever.
Nope.
outside of that, they may have the same skin color.
Right.
Same with us. Oprah has zero in common with someone that's on street level
Right.
in a ghetto. But we're conditioned to believe that, from Oprah on down, we share the same fight.
Right.
And reality is we don't.
Not the truth. Right.
Oprah's fight and her issues, her problems are much different than the guy down here. I don't care if they share the same skin color.
Very true.
And so the real, puppet masters, in my opinion, they like this divide. It can't. They couldn't exist without, because if people actually started getting together on the same page, that's a problem.
Right.
Because now we can start voting for truly what is your interest. Right. You can start diverting money in the right ways that you should have. Right. Like you said, the media has a severely strong role in this. Why is it that we are hyper consumers? Because our values are determined a lot of times through the media and our music.
And our purchasing power.
Okay, well, who controls our music? It ain't us.
No, it ain't. And that my whole book is about that, by the way. But
we don't control the music. We don't control the imagery.
The sports. We
don't control any of the sports teams. When you really look at how's the power, the control, and the money, that's really where the answers lie.
True.
And so it is by design that we value things the way we do.
Right.
They like it that way.
Right.
Because if we pulled that $1 trillion in spending power that the Black community wields, that's enough to make some huge waves and
massive changes.
And you don't have that control anymore.
Right.
Once you lose that control, game over.
Right.
And so whether it be the media, whether it be the institutions for education, whether it be by any means necessary, all of those pillars of control have nothing to do with people to look like you. And so they're perfectly okay having us fight it out over race.
Right.
Yeah, good, great.
Right. Right. And you're right, because again, I mean, the distribution of wealth is so polarized, and that is by design. Because I mean, let's be honest with you. I mean, he who what is it? He who dies with the most toys wins, or something like that. It's kind of how it works. I mean, it's kind of how it is. And I guess, maybe that is, me, I'm always a big believer in preaching the truth, or at least teaching the truth. Maybe that is some of the discussions or some of the education that needs to be had, at college level, for instance.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what they're teaching these kids in these colleges. I've got a sense from all the executives that I've supported over my years. And I
teaching them the right things.
Certainly not. So again, well, I don't want to talk your ear off. I'm, so appreciative, first of all, that you even talked to me, but then second, that you're able to do it and school me a lot as well. I don't know all the answers, and I certainly don't purport to, but I do, appreciate conversations like this, just because it's lonely. It's kind of lonely out on this island as being, someone that you consider or yourself to be woke and, empathetic, and actually really caring about the world and wanting people to succeed. I mean, I devote my life to helping people succeed. But at the same time, it's hard to, reconcile a lot that I'm seeing, and to want to be just as optimistic as everyone else in that this is going to miraculously fix. And
not in our lifetime.
No, sadly.
But if we lay a few of the bricks,
yep,
the ones behind us will lay a few more. There's
agreed.
Were laid before we got here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, that's I guess the prescription. For those of us that are like, instantaneous gratification warriors,
Right. You're not gonna get anything for
you
your
ain't,
efforts today.
not today. Right. You put
Not
that
in
on,
your lifetime. You're not gonna see
not
some.
right. Now try reconciling that when you're trying to do good in your lifetime, and make big sweeping change in your lifetime. It's hard, but
Well, I have a somewhat of an advantage because I can focus on what I'm leaving for my children.
yeah, right,
And so, okay, I'm not going to see it. I know I'm not going to see it.
right.
But hopefully, if I leave them with enough knowledge
Mhm.
and I put in enough work myself,
Yeah,
they'll have a leg up, and
exactly,
and hopefully they'll see it.
exactly,
But
exactly.
I don't. I'm not going to see it. There's too much that needs to change. Too many beliefs that have to be
Yeah,
shattered in order, and that takes time.
it
And
does.
I don't have that kind of time.
I don't, for sure, and nor that amount of patience anymore. I'm finding that I'm just like becoming quite the old crotchety man. At 51, it's like get off the grass, you know,
Oh,
get
you're
off
that
my
guy now.
grass. Damn it. So
Oh, funny.
so again, thank you, Kelly. I appreciate your diatribe. Please tell people a little bit about NPM, because I think you do such amazing work, and I want to make sure I give you all the shine in the world. So
Okay. Well, I am founder of Mind Power Money and the MPM Elite Coaching Program, where I help people in delivering transformation, accountability, and results. It's really
mhm.
that simple. So, what do you want to do, or where are you now? Where you want to go? Here's the things that you say can get you there, and I ride your ass until you.
So you do
That's
exactly.
pretty much the whole
and and
program.
and and quite successfully, no less, because I've met quite a few of your I call them disciples, in fact,
Yeah,
who have done quite well and are continuing to do so. So, and
yeah,
I'm so glad we're cut from the same cloth. We travel in concentric circles, which is kind of nice. So,
yeah.
again, I appreciate your time and
Thank you.
love having
Thanks
these
a lot.
conversations. And we already got like three more topics to discover or
I
to
know, man.
discuss at some point. So,
Let's come over
uh,
here and talk shit anytime.
exactly my favorite thing to do with you. So, done
Hey,
deal.
I'm not even tired. It's midnight. What's up? What's next?
Oh no, we can keep talking. I have no problem with that. I'll cut this shit into like 16 damn things, and I'll be done for the rest of the year. I can go sip me a
So
mai
yeah,
tai
we'll save it
somewhere.
for the next one.
Yeah, we will, for sure, for sure. Thank you, my friend. I
Uh,
appreciate it.
All right, man.
All right.